The Galactic Empire had not been challenged in 312 standard cycles, and even the word challenge felt like an indulgence rather than a truth. Conquest had become procedural. Resistance was catalogued, analyzed, and dissolved with the same detached efficiency used to regulate trade routes or recalibrate orbital defenses. Empires were not built on passion, they were built on inevitability. The Great Council Chamber reflected that belief perfectly. It was a structure grown rather than built, layers of bioarchitected stone and living crystal spiraling upward into a ceiling so distant it faded into darkness. Light came not from lamps but from energy veins pulsing slowly through the walls, responding to the collective biosignatures of the species present. The more powerful the civilization, the stronger the glow around its seeding ring. The center floated the imperial sigil, a massive geometric construct that rotated with precise slowness, symbolizing balance, order, and unbreakable hierarchy. Beneath it, representatives of nearly 4,000 sentient species observed, calculated, and waited. This was not a place of debate anymore. That era had ended centuries ago. The Council no longer decided if something would happen, only how efficiently. The matter of the day was Earth. Most members of the Council regarded the name with mild disinterest. Humanity was filed under emerging civilizations, Class C, technologically competent but socially volatile, capable of producing impressive bursts of innovation followed by periods of internal collapse. They were known for paradoxes, cooperative yet combative, empathetic yet destructive, idealistic yet brutally pragmatic when threatened. The Empire had allowed them a diplomatic seat less out of respect and more out of habit. Granting observation status smoothed absorption later. The humans were expected to fracture on their own within a few centuries regardless. Empires had patience measured in millennia. When the human representative entered the chamber, there was no ripple of reaction. She walked alone and a guard followed her. No defensive drones hovered nearby. No ceremonial attire marked her as important. She wore neutral fabrics designed for comfort rather than intimidation, colored in subdued tones that blended easily with the ambient lighting. Her pace was unhurried, neither deferential nor confrontational. She moved like someone entering a familiar room rather than the most powerful political chamber in the known galaxy. Several council members noted this with mild curiosity. Others flagged it as a cultural misunderstanding. Humans often failed to grasp the symbolic language of power. She stopped at the designated position for non-core species envoys and waited an OBOW.NO proclamation to NO attempt to draw attention. The Imperial High Speaker, a massive being of layered chitin and luminescent membranes, initiated the session. Its voice resonated across the chamber without amplification, carried on harmonic frequencies that translated automatically for all present. The Empire acknowledged the arrival of Earth's representative. Formalities were observed. Protocols were recited. Historical summaries were displayed across the shared cognitive lattice. Humanity's rise from planetary conflict to limited interstellar travel unfolded in clean, compressed data streams. Wars, recoveries, breakthroughs, collapses, unity movements, fragmentation, reunification. A predictable pattern. The Empire had seen it thousands of times. What was less predictable was the human woman's expression as the summary played. She did not look impressed or defensive. She did not attempt to interject or correct the record. Her face remained composed, eyes attentive, posture relaxed but aligned. She absorbed the narrative of her species as if listening to an old story she already knew by heart. When the Imperial speaker concluded, the tone shifted subtly. The Empire expressed concern over Earth's rapid militarization, concern over unauthorized expansion beyond permitted trade corridors, concern over repeated violations of containment advisories issued for the protection of humanity and neighboring systems. The language was neutral, dispassionate, almost kind. The Empire did not threaten. It did not accuse. It simply explained consequences as one might explain gravity. The woman diplomat listened without interruption. When it was her turn to speak, she did not begin immediately. She paused, just long enough for several council members to register discomfort. Silence was unusual here. Most envoys rushed to fill it, afraid of appearing uncertain. She was not. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and unremarkable in tone. There was no attempt at rhetorical flourish. Earth acknowledged the Empire's concerns. Earth valued peace. Earth had no intention of destabilizing the region. She used language so carefully measured it almost disappeared into itself. Some members of the council relaxed. This was familiar. Emerging civilizations always sounded like this at first. Gratitude, assurances, willingness to cooperate. But then she asked a question. It was not confrontational. It was framed as a request for clarification. She asked how many independent species the Empire currently governed by force rather than treaty. The chamber stilled, not dramatically, but perceptibly. The question was not forbidden, but it was unnecessary. The answer was publicly available. The Empire did not hide its conquests. The imperial speaker answered without hesitation. Thousands. The woman nodded slowly, as if confirming a calculation. She asked another question. How many of those species had once been offered protective oversight similar to what Earth was now receiving? There was a fractional pause before the answer came. Most. Still no reaction from her. No visible judgment. She asked a third question. How many of those species had voluntarily remained within the Empire once technological parity was achieved? The answer was fewer. The Council exchanged subtle signals. Data tags passed quietly between intelligence representatives. This line of questioning was unusual. Not dangerous, but inconvenient. Humans were known for asking inefficient questions. Emotional ones. Philosophical ones. The Empire responded anyway. The woman thanked them and said nothing more. No demands, no objections, no resistance. To the observers, it looked like compliance. After the session ended, internal analyses circulated rapidly. The consensus was reassuring. Earth's envoy was intelligent but ultimately constrained by her civilization's limitations. Curiosity did not equate to defiance. The questions were likely a domestic performance, gestures meant to placate Earth's internal factions resistant to integration. The recommendation was to proceed. Pressure would be applied gradually. Access limitations. Resource tariffs. Strategic restrictions framed as safety measures. Earth would adapt, as all others had. The woman diplomat returned to Earth without incident. Months passed. During that time, the Empire observed increasing human activity. Not militarily aggressive, but reorganized. Supply chains shifted. Civilian infrastructure expanded in patterns that did not align with economic projections. Communications traffic intensified, but encryption protocols remained within acceptable civilian ranges. Empire analysts flagged it as internal consolidation. Humans were prone to overreaction. Fear often drove inefficient resource allocation. The Empire adjusted containment measures slightly. Earth responded not with protest, but with silence. No appeals. No escalation. Another council session was convened. The woman returned, same attire, same posture, same calm. Fear did not spread through the Galactic Empire like panic. Panic was loud, disorganized, emotional. What followed the disappearance of the execution feed was something far worse. It was silence led atop confusion. Confusion led atop disbelief. Command channels filled with requests for clarification that received no replies. Sensor arrays reported contradictory data. Timestamps desynchronized across systems separated by light years, as if the Empire's own chronology had begun to fracture. The Empire had no word for what it was experiencing because it had never imagined a threat that did not announce itself as an enemy. The first confirmed retaliation did not resemble warfare. An Imperial shipyard orbiting a resource world simply ceased functioning. No alarms triggered. No defenses activated. Workers reported that tools slipped from their hands, that corridors felt longer than before, that the air seemed heavier despite unchanged pressure. Then, one by one, lights failed, not all at once, but in patterns too deliberate to be random. Emergency power never engaged. When rescue vessels arrived, they found the station intact. No hull breaches. No corpses. Every sentient being aboard was gone. Surveillance footage later reviewed by Allied analysts revealed something that chilled even veteran observers. In the final minutes before disappearance, crew members were not running or fighting. They were listening. Heads tilted. Movements slowed. Some reached out, as if sensing something just beyond perception. The Empire labeled the incident an evacuation anomaly. Then it happened again. A frontier fortress, armed heavily enough to repel a fleet, went dark during a routine shift change. Long-range scans detected faint distortions, like heat haze without heat. Patrol craft dispatched to investigate never returned. The next transmission from a sector was not a distress call, but a fragment of audio picked up across multiple frequencies simultaneously. It sounded like something moving through leaves. Humanity remained silent. Other species began to remember old human stories they had dismissed as cultural curiosities. Myths of forests that walked, of houses that moved on legs, of a presence that did not hunt for food or territory, but for balance. They realized, with growing unease, that humans had never denied their myths were true. They had only stopped talking about them. Deep within Imperial territory, in a chamber that had been designed to break minds, the three human generals were no longer fully restrained by technology. Systems failed around them, not violently, but obediently, as if recognizing a higher authority. Their captors fled when doors refused to open on command, when walls began to feel wrong beneath their hands. One by one, the torturers disappeared and no screams were recorded. Across the Empire, command staff attempted to regain control. Fleets were mobilized. Borders were reinforced. Weapon platforms charged to full capacity. The Empire did what it had always done when faced with resistance. IT prepared to crush it. But there was no front line. Imperial admirals reported that stars seemed dimmer along certain routes. Navigation charts became unreliable, as if space itself refused to remain fixed. Ships that jumped into hyperspace emerged minutes earlier than they had departed, or failed to emerge at all. Artificial intelligences began returning errors when attempting to calculate probability, responding with null values where certainty should have been. The Baba Yaga was not a ship. IT was not a fleet. IT was not even singular. Human archives, later shared reluctantly with allied species, would explain that the Baba Yaga was a protocol layered across myth, psychology, and technology. It was a last resort response built not to win wars, but to end behaviors. It operated on fear because fear was universal. It targeted cruelty because cruelty left patterns that could be tracked across civilizations. IT did not need permission. IT needed justification. The torture of the three generals had been sufficient. Imperial worlds began to fall, not through invasion, but through unraveling. Leadership disappeared first. Governors vanished from secure chambers. Admirals were last seen reviewing reports that slowly filled with static. No witnesses could agree on what they saw. Some described shadows that moved independently of light. Others spoke of sounds that came from inside their thoughts. The Empire tried to negotiate. Humanity responded once. The message was brief, broadcast across open channels, carried by no identifiable transmitter. It stated that this was not a war. Wars ended when one side surrendered. This was correction. Correction ended when the lesson was learned. Entire sectors of Imperial space entered. Allied species watched in horror and awe as the most powerful civilization the galaxy had ever known collapsed without a single decisive battle. Trade routes rerouted themselves as navigational hazards multiplied. Former Imperial subjects declared independence not through rebellion, but because no authority remained to oppose them. The heart of the Empire, the homeworld prepared its final defense. Planetary shields activated. Orbital platforms aligned. Billions waited for an attack that never came. Instead, night fell early. Stars vanished behind something that was not darkness, but absence. Sensors overloaded, trying to measure nothing. The Baba Yaga did not strike the planet. It circled it, slowly, deliberately, letting the population feel watched. Then the rulers were taken, not executed. Taken. The remaining population was left alive, infrastructure intact, skies clearing as suddenly as they had darkened. A final message appeared on every screen, translated perfectly into every known language. IT explained that humanity did not exterminate civilizations lightly. Extermination was wasteful. What humanity removed were threats. The Empire, it said, had mistaken restraint for submission and cruelty for strength. Deity reminded the galaxy that monsters were not born from rage, but from necessity, and that humanity preferred not to need them. When the Baba Yaga withdrew, it did not leave ruins. It left a vacuum of authority, a memory of fear, and a warning etched into galactic consciousness. The three generals were never seen again. Some said they died, others believed they had become something else. Humanity returned to diplomacy. Its fleets rejoined alliances. Its diplomats resumed calm negotiations. Trade flowed. Treaties were signed. To an untrained observer, nothing had changed, but across the galaxy, new rules emerged. No human commander was ever taken prisoner again. No human world was ever threatened openly, and no species ever again laughed at human myths. Because somewhere beyond charts and sensors, something old listened, and humanity, quiet once more, kept its monsters buried, not out of fear but out of mercy.